It's a great joy to gather with all of our graduates on this feast day today of Corpus Christi, which is the feast of the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. So it always happens in this time after Trinity Sunday, where we pause as a church to really contemplate the supreme gift that we have as Catholics of the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Eucharist. And as I was praying through this beautiful feast, there was a line from J.R. Tolkien. Perhaps some of you have come across this line before, but obviously if some of you are readers, hopefully our graduates have read The Lord of the Rings. Probably a lot of us have seen the movies. But he was a committed Catholic, and he had a deep, deep love for the Blessed Sacrament, for the Eucharist. And he has this beautiful letter that he wrote to his son Christopher, actually on his deathbed. And it begins, "My dear son, I have something I want to share with you." And the letter continues, he says, "Out of the darkness of my life, so much frustrated, I put before you the one great thing to love on all the earth, the Blessed Sacrament. There you will find romance, glory, honor, fidelity, and the true way of all your loves on earth." So J.R. Tolkien had this deep love for the Blessed Sacrament, the Eucharist, and he held this before his son when he was dying, but perhaps a different transition points as you are now going to a new phase of life, college, and perhaps in the fall, wherever the Lord might lead, that a father wants to say the biggest adventure for you, the love above all other loves, is the Blessed Sacrament. There's a powerful invitation here. He says, "There you will find romance, glory, honor, fidelity, and the true way of all your loves on earth." So Tolkien has this conviction that the love of the Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament, can actually orient all of our other loves in life. It's beautiful. Can actually orient everything else we'll do after graduation, all of our lives. There's this orientation around the gift of Jesus' real presence, his body, blood, soul, and divinity given to us here at the altar, every time we come into church, every time we go into our adoration chapel. So I'd just like to look at what is this love that can orient the rest of our lives, and how do we see it first in what Jesus has done for us? Well, first, one of the natures of this love is it's a sacrificing love. So we heard that from Paul's recounting to the Corinthians. He says, "I handed on to you what I myself heard, that Jesus, at the night he was handed over." So this is the night where he, in a few hours, he's going to be handed over to guards. He's going to be abused, mocked, mistreated, and he's going to die on the cross. So he's handing himself over, this sacrifice of his life. And even every time we celebrate Mass, the words of institution, "This is my body given for you." There's this element of a life that's poured out. I was speaking with a young father earlier this week, and he said they're expecting another child, and he says, "Father Sam, life is really full right now." And I said, yeah, it is for you, because they have a beautiful family, but they're continuing to grow, and just being able to name that it's a sacrifice for them, and they're feeling stretched in a lot of good ways, that there's something Eucharistic about that sacrifice, to be able to welcome another life into their home. But he said, it's not easy. We're feeling the stretching. And I said, you guys are in the fullness of life right now, but it's not unseen by God, because the nature of his love, this Eucharistic love, is actually born out of sacrifice. So when we experience a pulling, a stretching in our Christian living, our Christian vocation, there's actually something Eucharistic about that. This is the very love at the core of our faith as Catholics, that it's his body and blood poured out, given over for us, given over for you and for me. So the first nature of this love that can orient our lives is a sacrificing love. So it helps us when we have to sacrifice, when we have to dig deep in our life, that Jesus has done that for us every time we receive him. It helps us to offer, to give that sacrifice of our own lives. But also a dimension of this love above all other loves that can orient and shape us is gratitude, thanksgiving. The very word Eucharist means thanksgiving. Eucharistia, this Greek word for jubilation, thanksgiving. And it says, as Paul recounts it in our readings, that Jesus, when he gathered his disciples, he gave thanks to the Father and then said, "This is my body, this is my blood." And every time we celebrate Mass, all of our prayers are oriented in thanksgiving. And if you just imagine Jesus' heart here, he knows that just in a few hours, he's going to be in the Garden of Gethsemane right after he gave his body and blood to his disciples, so much so that the stress that he's sweating blood just a few hours later. So he knows what this sacrifice is really going to mean for him. But in that, he still gives thanks. He still has gratitude to God his Father, and it orients the gift of his life. I give thanks to you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth. You've given these things, bread and wine. They're going to be transformed. And in our Christian living, in our spiritual lives, gratitude is such an important gift and a practice and a tool that we really need to cultivate. I love St. Therese of Lisieux, one of my favorite saints. She says, gratitude above all other things is the number one thing that brings us the most grace. It disposes us. It makes us open to the reality of this love that orients the sacrifice of his life, gratitude. So that's Therese's perspective. I've also been walking with a few gentlemen who have been struggling with some addiction in their life, and in their recovery programs, they said that their counselors said that the fastest way to rewire a brain is through gratitude. I thought fascinating. They said, especially if you feel tempted to go back to something that's not good for you, or if you feel down or depressed, in those moments, if you start saying thank you to God, that's the quickest way to find an escape, the quickest way to actually orient and allow God's love to meet you right there in that place. And one of these really national programs for recovery, for addictions and all sorts of things, is called gratitude, because that's the power of gratitude that can do for our lives, that when we're thankful, it can just orient and shape and dispose us, make us open to the inflowing grace that God has for us. So this love that orients, it's sacrificial love. It's a love that allows us to actually have gratitude in the midst of suffering, in the midst of joys, in the midst of everything. But it's also a healing love. If you caught in the gospel that there's 5,000 people gathered there, Jesus feeds them, but it says first that all those who were sick came to him and he healed them. And then the gospel continues, but that's what it says, simple. They came to him and he healed them. What we find in the gift of the Holy Eucharist is really this antidote, this remedy for our mortality. It's this healing salve in all the areas of our life. We have this beautiful adoration chapel that I know so many of you have a committed hour there each week. It was last Monday, I had the chance of leading family adoration. There was over 60 young kids in our chapel, and it was wild. It was pretty lively in there, but it was so amazing just to have them come and sit, and we gathered all in front of Jesus right there in the monstrance, and we sat on the rug around, and I said, children, what do you see? What does this look like? And there was a few off-the-wall responses, but a few good responses. They said, it looks like a sun, the beautiful gold monstrance. It looks light. And I thought, like, what a beautiful image, and that's what the gold represents, is it's him as the light of the world shining in our darkness. And I just shared with them that sometimes, children, we just need to sit here before him, because sometimes we have different worries or anxieties or weaknesses or sins or darkness in us that can only be dissipated by just being in his rays, by just holding ourselves there before the sun, and his light can actually banish the darkness for us, assure him that he's actually there with us in those hard areas, in those those sufferings and those crosses. This love that orients, it heals, it can lead us to gratitude, it can lead us to sacrifice well. So wherever the Lord might lead you in these next months, weeks, years, I want you to know that you have a refuge in the beautiful gift of the Blessed Sacrament, that Jesus is for you. He's fundamentally, this is my body given for you. Not in some generic for y'all, no, for you and for me. There's this personal nature of how he wants to give himself to each one of us and can really orient us, orient our lives. Out of the darkness of my life, so much frustrated, I put before you the one great thing to love on earth, the Blessed Sacrament. There you will find romance, glory, honor, fidelity, and the true way of all your loves on earth.